Hi, this is Laura Holyoke, and I have a PowerPoint for you today going over logic models and how they're going to relate to us for our program planning. What is a logic model? Basically, it's a picture of how a program is supposed to work. You should be able to look at the picture and say, oh, I understand this. So it makes explicit and visual statement of activities that are going to happen in the program that are supposed to bring about the change that you want to see. The results that you expected to see should also be built into the logic model. So it displays how change will unfold, sort of a roadmap, a conceptual map, or a pathways map, if you will. This also sometimes is called a theory of change or model of change. You can see down below, these are elements that go into a logic model, although they're fuzzy, my apologies. But it's the idea that if we do this, activities, outputs, then this should happen. Short-term outcomes, interim outcomes, and long-term outcomes. When building a program, and starting with a logic model, you really need to start with a needs or problem statement. So a needs statement is often used in funding for programs. This is what is needed, and what is the unmet need you are trying to address. So the problem statement usually applies to social community concerns. Terms are used interchangeably often, the needs and problem statement. So what is the specific problem you want to address? So I've identified this for you in our syllabus. Logic model helps to think through change. So it's the process of identifying the need. And if you look at the simple logic model in the lower right-hand corner, the need is to get pills because this individual is sick. What are the desired results? Well, we want to feel better. So what activity do? We take pills for the outcome to feel better. Very basic logic model, if you will. Different elements that go into logic model. The first overall one is the program outcome or goal. So what do we hope to change? What sort of impact ultimately do we want our program to have? Sometimes, if you look at the logic model outline underneath, oftentimes that's a long-term impact. So in order to get there, what resources or inputs will be invested as part of the program? What activities does the program produce? What do we do? Outputs, what events, action steps, or activities will happen as part of the program? This may look a little bit like the outputs and activities, but outputs often counts the number of hours or the number of contacts. And then the outcomes. So what is expected for change for the target market or community or organization? Often outcomes are stated in short term, medium term, and long term. Short term is usually immediate. So if we offer a workshop on smoking cessation, that short-term outcome should be some sort of knowledge that is learned through the workshop. Medium term may actually be to change the behavior to stop smoking, and the long term would be to increase an individual's health. I'm going to keep bringing up the logic model and probably try not to repeat myself here, but I want to present this in as many ways as I can for you. Logic model is a diagram and text that illustrates causal relationships among program elements. So you can see logically what's going to happen. So if we use these resources for these activities to produce these outputs so that these customers, target market if you will, can change whatever, which leads to these intermediate outcomes. And finally, these are the ultimate results that we're looking for. I'm going to walk you through an example of a logic model. This is a teen smoking reduction program. Inputs: staff, instruction modules, volunteers, and training of volunteers. If we have that input, then we can do these activities. The program includes one session lecture, and then to match volunteer mentor for counseling with teens. The outputs then is a number of youth that attend the lectures, and then the number of youth matched with the mentors. So we have those outputs. What we expect, initial outcomes, is increased knowledge of risks of smoking. We also expect increased support from mentor for the teen to quit smoking. Intermediate outcomes is that the youth quit smoking, and then the long-term outcomes or impacts, less illness, longer life expectancy, lowered health costs. Another way to look at the logic model is if we use these resources for these activities to produce these outputs, that's our planned work on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is the intended results. So they immediately will know this, can do this, which will then lead to usually behavioral change and then long-term impact. The cartoon on the lower right-hand says, "It may be a model, Captain, but it's highly illogical." So I want to talk a little bit about our assignment for this class and talk about the logic model while we do this. Goals and objectives. So a goal, all of you looked up programs and they have a goal or a mission statement. So how things will be different if a program is successful and how to get to that successful long-term impact that we want. I'm going to say maybe we pick as a goal for a mindfulness program is to improve mental health and well-being. So that's a long-term impact. Well, how do we get there? So our objectives are something specific, measurable, often time-based benchmarks. So we're going to get to improved mental health and well-being by reducing stress, by boosting working memory and focus, and by decreasing emotional reactivity. Well, how are we going to do those? And the how comes in the activities in our program and the outputs in our program. And by the way, these objectives, I just picked them just as examples. Another way to look at this, so we have our impact and goal, we have our outcomes that we want and objectives. So how do we get to those outcomes and objectives? Those are the activities and output. So I put just some examples down here. One might be an 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction course, maybe a mindfulness retreat, could be internet smartphone apps that are designed specifically for this audience, and people are trained then to use the app who are in the program. I provide you with a logic model template that looks like this. If you would like to design another one, I know there's several templates out there, but this is the one that I've used for class. Please feel free if you would like to, if you'd like to see something different, to design that. But this should be pretty easy to input your information, your inputs, activities, outputs. So again, this kind of walks you through, in order to accomplish your goals, we need these resources. We'll do these activities, result in the following evidence of progress. This is the, offering 12 times, meeting with X number of people, and we expect the following changes. And following measurable changes then within the next 1 to 3 years. Oftentimes that's how behavioral changes are measured. And then long-term outcomes or impacts. Looks a little bit like this. So inputs include personnel, volunteers, time, money, materials, equipment, technology, curriculum, partners, and resources, other resources. The activities are what we produce, what services we offer, what infrastructure we put in place in order to offer outputs. So outputs answer how many or how much, the tasks that we do, and who we will reach. These look like conducting workshops, delivering services, training, providing counseling, one-on-one mentors, as was mentioned before. Short-term outcomes. These, oftentimes if you do program evaluation, because we're going to do that next, hint, how are you going to measure these short-term outcomes? So these are changes that we expect to see from our outputs. Maybe change in status, getting a degree or a certificate, change in skills, learning new skills, change in behavior, although oftentimes it's more medium-term outcomes, change in knowledge or level of functioning. Pretty easily measured in pre and post surveys. Then the medium-term outcomes are what we want to happen. These are often habit changes for skills, behaviors, and capabilities. And then what we hope happens as a result from our program are the long-term outcomes, the conditions and consequences. These are the ultimate benefits, something that's increased mental health or decreased. Once again, logic model. This is an if-then model. If we put in these resources, then we can do these activities. If we do these activities, then we can do these outputs. So you can look at it forward like that. Logic models are almost always thought of in terms of if-then statements. We can, however, do reverse logic model, and it asks but how questions. Normally we start from the left, but the reverse logic starts from the right, starts from where we want to end up. So if we want to end up with number of self-reported healthy days to increase, we ask, how are we going to get there? Well, we're going to increase employees' physical activity. How are we going to do that? We're going to make environmental changes that will be implemented and promoted. How are we going to do that? Well, the environmental changes will be things like improving stairwells and adding walking trails. These will be developed and tested. How are we going to do that? Well, we'll know that that's what we need to do because we're going to do research. So you can see how this looks backed up from the right to the left instead of the left to the right. A logic model, if you would like to walk through this, some parts of this can be a little confusing, I think, but the activities are well stated. Sometimes the indicators can also be the outputs in this, and sometimes the outcomes could be the outputs. However, it gives you a pretty good idea of activities. We'll be writing indicators later for our logic models, especially when we write our program evaluation plan. And then impacts here, all on the right-hand side, are short-term, intermediate, and long-term. Logic model tip. Models do not need to be drawn to scale. I encourage you to keep your logic models pretty simple and straightforward. They can get very nested, especially some of you identified programs that have programs and programs and programs within them. So please choose something pretty simple, if you will, when you're building yours. So this guy says, now if you follow me into the next room, we'll take a look at some of the long-term outcomes. I have a blank, sorry about the blank slide. Here's your knowledge blog number 2, what I'd like for you to do. Using the program that you identified for the first knowledge blog, you'll go back, tell us what that program is, you'll provide a link to that program, you will restate what the mission or goal is of that program, and then create a simple logic model that includes 2 to 3 resources or inputs, 2 to 3 activities, 2 to 3 outputs, 2 immediate or short-term outcomes, 1 intermediate outcome. And then remember that all of these should be able to go from left to right if we do this then, and then from right to left. So we want this, how do we get there? That's all I have for you. I'll have more stuff on the knowledge blog on the website. Thank you so much.